Good evening and welcome to the January 28, 2009 Civil Service Commission meeting. May we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Gantis?
Yes.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Commissioner Karian?
Yes.
And for the record, Commissioner Devine and Commissioner Coleman are absent.
What's next?
Reading of the minutes.
Mr. Manukian
was
not here.
Then I don't think we can take those up because we won't have.
Actually, we will. Well, we have a majority here, and the quorum all it needs is 2 people. And me and you were here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
We can actually approve it.
That's correct.
Okay. So I will move.
No, I will move.
Go ahead and you move.
Move approval of the minutes as presented.
I will actually second that. May we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Gantis?
Yes.
Commissioner Manukian?
Abstain.
Commissioner Karian?
Yes. What's next?
Oral communications.
We have one card today from Mr. Milano, Robert Milano. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Milano. Go ahead.
Chairman Abkarian, members of the Civil Service Commission. My name is Herbert Milano. I come to you out of a deep concern about a problem that this city has had for several years, and that it has cost the city millions of dollars. And that is the problem that we have with projects having significant cost overruns. And I bring it to your attention for the following reason. Back in February the 8th of 2006, as you can see from the document that I handed out to you, there was a presentation made to you on behalf of Mr. David Ahern, Senior Redevelopment Project Manager. And in this particular request, the Civil Service Commission was asked to, in a way, water down the requirements of project management so that individuals with simply an MBA degree would be suitable as project managers. In a nutshell, that's what it is. And this commission approved the GMA proposed changes, which then allowed Mr. Ahern to move from one particular city department to another. Now, here is my problem. When I made a request with regard to if there were any certified project managers with regard to the latest project overrun, which occurred on the MSB building, there was apparently the elevator was never included as part of the original project, and there was a contentious issue with the city and the developer, which turned into a lawsuit. Now, I can go back to previous projects with Parks and Recreation, where, again, projects that were prepared eventually went significantly over budget. I go back to the police building, a project of $32 million, wound up at $64 million. So I decided to ask a question. How many people in Glendale, employees, who manage these projects are properly certified by the Project Management Institute? How many of them are PMPs? It's a very simple question. And I submitted a California Public Records Act. I got back an answer that all that information is personal. It's in their personnel file. On the one hand, when we advertise for a particular position, we may state that they need project management experience. On the other hand, when we, the public, wants to know how come all of these projects continue to have significant cost overruns, we're basically denied a very basic thing to say, is this person qualified to handle this particular type of projects? And we're paying dearly. I've been asking for some projects for south of Glendale, and the answer always is that we don't have enough money in the city to do a swimming pool or to expand a parkland. But in the meantime, all of these projects are costing us tens of millions of dollars in cost overruns. And so I'm requesting that the Civil Service Commission bring back the issue of the requirements of individuals handling projects, because most organizations of this size generally tend to have, for example, a project management office, a PMO, an office that continually is increasing the level of knowledge and experience and the learning that takes place to ensure that you have best practices. We can continue in a process in the city where every project is almost guaranteed a cost overrun. I only know of one project that basically came in on budget, and that's the soccer fields that occurred up, in the sports complex. But other than that fairly simple project, every project that I've run into has significant cost overruns in the millions of dollars. And this seems like this is the standard in the city. So for me to ask to see if there are any employees or what employees have proper certification, I mean, everything this city does is practically projects, whether it's in information technology, whether it is construction, whether it's project for the police, whether it's project in any department, everything is about projects. For this city not to have a PMO is incredible. For us not to be able to access basic information to say, does this person have the qualifications, the training, the testing, to bring a project on time, on budget, without having the time by slip, is a basic question that any good organization would ask. And so I'm asking for this commission to review these particular changes that were made that basically water down the requirements, and for us to hopefully look at an evaluation of managers to see that when a manager puts another individual in charge of a project, that he is choosing someone with truly qualified experience, with knowledge of being able to do different types of software products, to be able to carry a project to fruition on time and on budget. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Do you want to comment?
just a very short comment. We were presented a written document, the minutes of 2806, that Mr. Milano yellowed in what he would like us to read. I read the entire minutes, and Mr. Milano's characterization of what we did at that meeting was wrong. We strengthened the position. We didn't weaken the position. I think it's important that the public understand that. I'm done.
Okay. Without arguing, I think these are issues that we will definitely look into in the future, Mr. Milano. These are issues that I would recommend that you take up with the people who sit instead of us in here on Tuesdays, a whole lot better than us, because as you know, we have no authority to most 90% of what you had requested. In reference to looking at the specifications, we'll definitely look into it, minus being able to do anything, but I think City Council will be a much better place to grieve your complaints than we would be. But thank you very much for coming in today. What's next?
Eligible list established.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is for your information only, and it indicates the eligible lists that have been established since our last meeting. As you can see, we have three lists that have been established. A little bit of a slowdown in our recruitment process, as you can see. But we have an engineer 1, police officer lateral, and a senior project manager lists that have been established. As per the policy of this commission, we have the list of total number of applications received, as well as the total number who ultimately made it onto the eligible list. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions? Before we go to the next item, just make sure that the items actually given to us by Mr. Milano actually make it to our packet for today's information, just so.
Well, it's for the record identified. It's a copy of minutes of the Civil Service Commission of February 8th, 2006.
What's next?
Job bulletin for approval, police lieutenant.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is the job bulletin for approval for the position of police lieutenant. This is being brought before you because this is a sworn safety promotional position, which is required to be brought before you under our civil service rules. This bulletin is fully consistent with the adopted class specification for police lieutenant. There is one clarification under the educational requirement, and that is that we're seeking to allow individuals who are eligible for the advanced or supervisory post certificates to be permitted to apply for the exam. I think the original language would indicate possession of this certificate, but there is a bit of a problem. Once an employee does complete all the requirements for a post certificate, oftentimes there's a several month delay in actually getting the certificate. So that's the only real modification to this, and what that would enable us to do is to take those who have completed all the requirements for their post certificate, yet may not yet have it in hand to present to us. So with that, that is pretty much it for this bulletin. We have brought this before the GPOA and the GMA, and no concerns have been expressed relative to this bulletin. If you have any questions, we have staff here to answer them. Chief Adams is here, as is Captain Kirk Palmer from the police department.
I have a couple of questions. I was going through this. Based on the selection process, you have professional panel interview, and there's a 60% next to it, and then you have community/internal panel interview, 40%. First of all, first question, community/internal panel, what is that? So I understand.
The community internal panel it's a concept we've used. In fact, we used it recently with I think it was either the deputy police or deputy fire chief or battalion chief exam. It's where we solicit people from the community to sit and participate in the interview process with the candidates. In addition to that, just in the interest of time and efficiency, we're sort of combining that panel with some of our internal people, maybe a department head, civilian manager within the police department, other people who would kind of provide a broader perspective. So the individual would thus be making a presentation before both community members as well as peers within the organization.
Oh, so you're combining them together.
Correct.
So, and the score from the combined panels would dictate 40% of the outcome. Is that correct?
From that one
From
panel,
that,
yes.
Then underneath it goes, and I apologize for it. I'm asking you because I don't know, I don't remember on the other promotional lists for the police officers. It says candidates must achieve a minimum of 70% to be able to pass each one of these panels. How do you handle that community internal and the internal panel? So that panel, which consists of the internal and the community, either do they get to score from each panel, or you just take their combined score?
Each panel, following the interviews, would convene and have their scores recorded, and each of the two panels, again the professional panel and the community/internal panel, would tally up their scores, and the candidate would be required to achieve a passing score on each of the two exam components.
So you look at them as two. See, for whatever reason I thought there was a professional panel interview, then the community is separate and the internal is separate. But you've merged the internal and the community together.
That's correct. And I believe, and maybe Captain Palmer can correct me, but I believe this is the first time we've ever explored the concept of doing a community panel at this level. I know we've done it for Captain, and we do it for our executives.
Actually, I just remember I was on one of the panels for it was the last lieutenants, and it was a community panel, wasn't it?
I think it was Captain. Wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
You have to recuse yourself now?
No. I just remember. No, it wasn't Captain. Actually, Captain Palmer, at that time, you were lieutenant, and it was the time when I guess Ian Grimes and all. This must have been at least 3 years ago.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, Kirk Palmer, overseeing the Captain overseeing the Administrative Services Division. You know, we've done these tests in a variety of manners, and I think in the one panel you're talking about, we had a separate component in which the candidates made an oral presentation. And quite frankly, in evaluating the process, we didn't think that was as effective. Also, you know, we're very aware that we feel strongly that it's important to build in a community component. And much like we did with our most recent captain's test. And what we did is in trying to evaluate how we do that, how do we evaluate a candidate for an internal fit within our larger city government, in addition build in a community component, we turn to what we understand is a very successful Fire BC testing process and really pluck that right out of that process and attempting to mirror that with this particular test. And again, as Mr. Doyle mentioned, in trying to keep the test as compact and manageable as possible, because we anticipate that in this particular testing process, we've cast quite a wide net, and actually timed this process so that we had the largest potential applicant pool. And so it was very important for us to have a process that we could reasonably manage.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Mr. Cantus.
Did we not, I know that in some positions we have 3 panels. We have usually an outside panel, an inside panel, and a community panel. That's not true for any of the police positions in the past?
Mr. Gantis, Commissioner Gantis, excuse me, we have used that process, again, in most recent captain's examination. I'm trying to think back. Other than this prior lieutenant's testing process in which we built in the oral presentation using community members as raters, that's the last time I can think of that we used that type of process, 3-pronged process.
The three-pronged process is typically used for our executive positions, but once it gets below that level, we usually try to do some variation of that along with a traditional oral board, but that's fairly common when we have an executive level position, and that's in fact what we did when Chief Adams was hired. It was 3 members.
3 different panels.
3 separate panels, yes.
But we do that for assistant chief or chief, captain, but we don't go below captain to do that.
There's no hard and fast rule on that. We try to, the higher the position, certainly the more extensive a process we try to do and try to involve as many people. But, becomes an issue of workload and what's practical sometimes.
Well, why if each component has to have a 70% passage rate, where does the 60 and 40 come in? In other words, once they pass that component, you weight 60% of their overall grade and 40% onto the community? Is that?
That's
Gone
correct.
through this once before. It's just the rating of where they fit in the list.
Correct. You take their total score, and the person may score 90% on the professional panel and 75% on the community internal panel, and then we get out our calculator and weigh the first one 60% and then the second one, and add it together, and we come up with a score.
Finally, I think the language that you've changed makes this non-grammatically correct on the attainment of / or eligible for advanced and supervisory post certificates. If the change is what I think you did, that would have been correct in the old language. But this, are you saying attainment of / or being eligible for advanced and supervisory post certificates is required?
That's correct.
Could we have that language?
It's the idea that the person has met all of the eligibility requirements for that certificate, yet again may not have it in their hand.
Let me just ask one more question. Do you mean that they've completed the post requirements but do not have the certificates?
Correct.
So shouldn't it just say attainment or completion of advanced and supervisory post certificate?
Well, it's being eligible for. In other words, you've completed it, you're eligible to get it, you just haven't gotten it because the bureaucracy hasn't done it.
The only thing you're waiting for is just the actual paper.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Because eligibility could mean that you're
eligible.
eligible to take the post, but you haven't taken it yet.
Well, it's not so much some of the requirements. In fact, for supervisory, the requirement is a certain amount of units and time and grade. And so what we're trying to say, since a supervisory certificate requires 2 years as a supervisor, and that's our minimum requirement, we don't want somebody that gets 2 years and a day not be eligible to take. They would be eligible for the supervisory certificate. This may surprise you, but the state of California at times takes quite a bit of time to.
I don't have any issues with that. I mean, I'm not trying to. Okay, all right. So the language of eligibility would actually work for a person who has 2 years and 1 year.
Absolutely, and it's the most inclusive language we can incorporate.
Okay. And the second thing I just want to ask is something that I've asked before, but the internal panel, now that you've combined them into internal and community, it's not a separate panel, so the internal panel can't say we don't want this guy and he basically is no longer there. If they don't pass the internal panel,
They're all in one room. The
So there'll be,
community,
let's say, I'll give you an example, 6 people and 3 officers from the Glendale Police, and if they say, no, we don't like this, and the community say, no, we like this guy, as long as he gets his percentage, he will actually get it.
that's correct. And again, we're not just limiting that to officers as far as internal people.
I understand,
Right.
I was just giving an example.
Right. We really envision the internal panel to be comprised of possibly other members of departments that we may interact closely with, community members, and maybe one sworn member from the department, maybe one of our civilian managers. So you're really going to get a diverse cross-section there, and we're looking for the broad perspective also.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. I think what the Chairman Abkarian was trying to clarify, and I think I got it too. In a hypothetical situation that someone passes the professional panel, the internal panel cannot eliminate
Yes, they can.
the candidate by themselves.
Yes.
But,
The internal/community.
yes, now the community's in there too.
That's correct.
Okay.
We're all in the same room.
The panel could, the entire panel could.
The entire
right,
panel,
yes,
yes,
but
that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Move to accept with the
Second.
changes proposed in the language under education/training.
There's a motion and a second. Could we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Gantis?
Yes.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
Chair Abkarian?
Yes. Okay, next item on the agenda was supposed to have been a consideration of rule amendments. However, we are told by our city attorney that there are some issues in reference to the Brown rule and notification that we were to amend. As such, because we want to make sure that there are no technical issues in us considering every and all rules noted in here, we are going to move this particular item to our next meeting, which would be February 11th of 2009.
It's not true. But you want to do it in March.
No, I don't want to do it in March. February 11th, 2009 is when we're going to take that on. It'll be a long day, so whoever's coming in here that day, just get ready. Be a fun day. So February 11th, 2009 is when we're going to actually look at the items.
That's our next meeting.
That's our next meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that there is one rule that there is some time factor on. There are others that are not. What I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, is that we put off everyone but that one rule to March 25th. I'm not going to be here March 11th, so...
March 25th?
Yeah, March 25th, for those other rules to be brought back, and that we instruct the staff to bring back the rule on similar qualifications transfer with a written rule properly noticed at the next meeting for our consideration.
Mr. Gantas, we were to discuss these issues tonight. The only reason we're not discussing them is because of one minor, very, very minor technical issue, which is the city attorney says we didn't properly notice it, so there needs to be more notification. So why would we postpone it to March 25th when we should have discussed it today if it wasn't for that minor delay? I want to have it on February 11, 2009. I really do. There's no reason for us to delay listening to the entire amendment on February 11, 2009.
Yeah, I agree too.
We were supposed to look at it today, so only for one minor technicality that we're not looking at the rules tonight.
Can we instruct the staff to, in that one instance, to bring back that rule actually written up so that we can act on the rule, the similar qualifications transfer rule? There is some urgency on that rule, and we can't discuss it tonight, but I'd like that, if we're going to bring that back, that's fine, but to specify that one rule, which is rule...
Mr. Gantas, we can't discuss it. If you have any requests to have some item put in, I think you should just send that to Mr. Doyle. And
No, it has to be done in an open session to put it on the agenda, but I'll do it at the proper time then. I'll do it at the proper time, part of the...
I'm afraid that if we discuss any rules...
I'm not going to discuss anything.
Okay,
I'm just asking that it be agendized.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not discussing anything.
Okay, go ahead.
What to be agendized? I'm just trying to...
Let me find it first.
It would be amendment number 22.
I would ask that that be agendized separately as an amendment to the rule. These are discussions. We're going to be discussing these. The other one, I'd like to have the rule actually so we can consider it. Agendized.
Said Rule 22.
Marked it, now I can't.
Amendment number 22. It's on the summary,
Oh, Chair.
Exhibit 1,
What number is it?
number 22.
Number 2.
Oh, yeah, there it is. I'm sorry.
Okay. That doesn't mean that we're going to approve it. It just means that we're going to consider it, just like any of the other amendments.
That's
But
correct.
if you want to bring a language so we can maybe, I mean, technically, we might actually approve everything and it might go at the same day, but, so I'm not really sure what we're doing on that day. But that specifically, if you bring the language in here, we might actually be able to pass that night.
Mr. Chair,
Assuming you have to, if we do that on number 22, you need to talk to the GMA and some of the associations as to what that means to them.
Mr. Chair, we have noticed the GMA and the other employee associations on these rules, but you are correct. As a broad review of all of them, we would want to have some meet and confer over the course of, whatever direction we get from you and the ultimate adoption of any of these. But the one that Mr. Gantis pointed out has been discussed with the employee associations, and there is general agreement that one is.
Okay, so why don't you bring the language next time if there, and make sure that by that time you've discussed this with all the appropriate associations. So if we do want to take an action on that one at least,
Correct.
then we can go ahead and do that.
Will do.
Thank you. Okay, what's next?
Agenda forecast.
So,
Mr. Chair, we have the agenda forecast. For our next meeting, we are then bringing these rule amendments back, as well as the Amendment 22 as a separate item. We also have the advertising budget expenditure report, and then a report that the Chair had asked regarding the Commission's role in approving the advertising budget.
Why don't we put that one off till the 25th so that we can give adequate time to the rules, Mr.
okay, you want to move both of those to the 25th? The report and the role of the commission?
We can do that.
And that date, all we would be doing would be the review of the amendments.
Okay.
Thank you. Nate?
No.
Okay. What's next?
Reports and information.
I have none.
What's next?
Civil Service Commission and our staff comments.
The only thing I'll say is, Roy, we still have you in mind. Get ready. He's at home. He's getting better every day, and he should be returning very, very soon. I hear he's getting much, much better. It seems like Mr. Mnuchin had I talked to him a few days ago, but Mr. Mnuchin just talked to him today.
He's doing
He's feeling much better, and I expect him back very, very soon.
Yeah.
Very, very good news. And Roy, we'll see you very soon.
Good news. Yes, Roy.
He was doing very well. I talked to him, and I think he'll be back soon. So.
Anything else?
Move to adjourn.
Good.